In a park, she performed a life-saving act for someone she didn't know. 3 hours passed, and then 5 high-end automobiles arrived at her residence. The subsequent events rendered her utterly stunned. 20 years. That was the duration of Denise Lattimore's service to that hospital. She wasn't simply a nurse, she was the nurse. The one they consulted when situations became critical. The one who eagerly accepted the less desirable shifts. Holidays, weekends, overnight assignments. Denise was consistently present. And then, abruptly, she ceased her service. The electronic message arrived at 6:42 a.m. While she was sipping her first cup of coffee, her shift wasn't supposed to start until 7:30. There was no meeting, no call. Just a subject line that read position status update. She clicked it and read, "We regret to inform you that due to internal restructuring, your position has been terminated effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be deposited by the end of the week. We thank you for your years of service." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Denise watched the screen, anticipating additional information. A follow-up, a phone number. Anything, nothing. She blinked, shut the laptop, and remained still. Her daughter, Mecca, was still asleep upstairs. The last thing Denise desired was for her to awaken and observe her mother falling apart before 7 a.m. Denise placed the coffee mug in the sink and stood for a full minute with her hands braced on the counter. She didn't cry. Not yet. She grabbed her keys, slipped on her running shoes, and left a note on the table. Went for a walk. "Be back soon. Love you." She didn't even bother to change out of her scrubs. She walked out the door and headed for Avondale Park, one of the oldest in Birmingham. It was quiet this time of morning. Just a few regulars walking their dogs, a jogger here and there. Denise wasn't sure what she was doing. She hadn't planned this walk. She hadn't planned anything. A weight settled in her chest, a feeling she needed to process. The phrases from the email echoed in her mind. "We regret to inform you." She considered it harsh, not just the dismissal, but the moment it occurred. Her daughter had recently begun her studies at Miles College. Tuition payments were approaching, and Denise had been striving to manage every dollar to cover expenses. There had been no prior notice, no meeting, no warning, simply a formal, impersonal message. She walked until her calves ached. She located a bench overlooking the small lake and sat down. Her phone vibrated. It was Mecca. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" It read. "Didn't hear you leave." Denise looked at the message. She began to type a reply. Deleted it. Typed another. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just needed air. Love you." She set the phone down and leaned back against the bench. The sky was a gentle, early blue, the kind of color that could make you momentarily forget how difficult life can be. "I gave them everything," she murmured, not realizing she had spoken aloud. To anyone else observing, she appeared like just another woman taking a morning walk. But internally, Denise was falling apart, not solely due to the job loss, but from the silence that followed. No one from the hospital contacted her. No one sent a message. 20 years, and not a single farewell. She rubbed her eyes. She wouldn't cry in a park, but something within her altered right then. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was grief. Perhaps it was anger disguised in a gentler form. For the first time in a long time, Denise felt still. Not okay, just still. Then she heard it. A sound. Quick, sharp, like someone hitting the pavement hard. She turned her head. A man had fallen near the trail, just beyond the row of hedges. He was maybe in his late 50s, face down on the ground, motionless. People looked, but no one moved. But Denise did. Denise didn't hesitate. Her body kicked into gear before her mind even caught up. She rose quickly, running towards the man prone on the asphalt. As she approached, the heat of the pavement was noticeable, along with the odor of sweat and a metallic tang. She wasn't sure if it was blood or fear. He remained still. "Sir?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" There was no response. Several individuals had paused at a safe distance. No one advanced. She carefully turned him over, observing his chest for signs of life, his neck for a pulse. His complexion was ashen. A bluish tint was appearing on his lips. Denise placed her fingers on the side of his neck. She felt nothing. "Call 911," she shouted without looking up. Someone mumbled, already did, but it seemed unimportant. She began counting seconds. She tilted his head back, checking his airway. Then she leaned in, delivered 2 quick breaths, and started compressions. 1, 2, 3. Her hands moved as if she's done this many times before. But this wasn't a training dummy. This was real. This was a matter of life or death. An audience observed, whispering and recording with their phones. However, their presence was insignificant. It was solely about her and him, and the sound of her hands striking his chest. "Come on," she murmured. "Don't you dare give up." He appeared to be in his mid-50s, dressed in a fitted black workout set, with a wedding ring and an Apple Watch. He seemed like the type of man who should be too healthy to collapse in public. But hearts are not governed by appearances. 1 minute passed, then 2. Denise felt sweat soaking through her scrubs, her hair plastered to her forehead. Her arms were sore, and her back throbbed. She continued working, focusing on her breathing. She compressed and counted. The silence was intense, a silence that felt like it was holding its breath. Then he gasped. The breath was weak and strained, but it was a breath. Denise moved closer. "Hey, are you with me?" His eyelids flickered. His chest moved a slight movement. Paramedics arrived less than a minute later. 2 of them rushed from the ambulance, carrying equipment. "I got him breathing," Denise said swiftly, stepping aside to allow them to take over. "No pulse when I arrived." I immediately began compressions. One of the medics acknowledged her. "Are you a nurse?" She replied I was. He didn't have time to inquire further. They proceeded with urgency. Oxygen mask, defibrillator pads, and vital signs assessment. Denise retreated, allowing the trained professionals to take charge. Her hands trembled. Someone behind her commented, "You saved him." She turned to see a woman, mid-30s, a jogger, visibly anxious. "You were incredible," the woman added. I didn't know what to do." Denise nodded once, then turned her eyes back to the man on the ground. She didn't need thanks. She just needed him to live. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, one of the paramedics looked at her and said, "You bought him time. That man's lucky you were here." Denise gave a tired half-smile. "I guess we both are," she said, watching as the ambulance pulled away. Sirens off. That was usually a good sign. The crowd began to thin, individuals returning to their daily lives as if nothing had occurred, as though they hadn't just witnessed a stranger die and return before their very eyes. Denise remained still for a brief moment, her heart racing. She then proceeded back towards the bench where it all began, sat down once more, and picked up her phone. Mecca had sent another message. "Mom, are you okay? Would you like me to bring breakfast?" Denise gazed at the message, her thumbs pausing above the screen. She then typed, "I'll be home soon." An event occurred. "I'll explain when I return," she texted. She didn't know the man's name, didn't know if he'd survived the day. Her actions weren't for praise. It was a reaction. It was inherent. It was her purpose. Although her professional role had shifted, her identity remained unchanged. But the world had a peculiar habit of returning when you least anticipated it. Denise didn't realize how quickly that return would happen. 3 hours later, Denise was back home. Mud clung to her shoes, a souvenir from the park, and she was still wearing her scrubs. Mecca had prepared eggs and toast, placing them on the stove before heading to her shift at the daycare. The house was silent, punctuated only by the ticking of the wall clock, which consistently ran 5 minutes fast. Denise settled onto the front porch, cradling a chipped mug of green tea. She held it with both hands, attempting to find comfort in its warmth rather than dwell on the persistent tension beneath her ribs. Her thoughts were jumbled, with fragments of the incident in the park and recollections of the chilling email. She couldn't erase the image of his face, the initial stillness of his chest. She remembered the moment she felt a return of life under her hands. She had witnessed people flatline previously, but this felt deeply personal. She took a deliberate sip, then she registered the sound. Engines, several of them. She raised her head from her mug and blinked. 5 luxury vehicles approached her street, following one another. These weren't simply elegant cars. They were the type usually seen in magazines or on social media influencers' profiles. Among them was a Lucid Air, a Mercedes Maybach, a matte black Escalade reflecting the afternoon light, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, and trailing behind, a sleek Aston Martin that emitted a distinct, almost living sound. The vehicles decelerated and halted directly in front of her house. A peculiar sensation arose within her, not fear precisely, but a more profound feeling, a quiet prompting. This concerns the events that followed. The entrance of the Lucid opened. A man emerged, tall, wearing a sharp suit, untied, charcoal gray with a black shirt beneath. He was clean-shaven, silver highlighting his temples, his face bearing a tranquil expression as if possessing an eternity. It required a moment for recognition, but when he spoke, her breath halted. Ms. Lattimore, she rose deliberately. He advanced, his walk fluid and assured, yet unpretentious. "I believe you saved my life earlier today," he stated. At the park, Denise peered, trying to recognize him. Appearing calm, without any signs of distress, with his complexion restored and his eyes bright, he seemed almost transformed. But it was indeed him. You collapsed," she observed. "I did," he confirmed with a slight nod. "And I understand I wouldn't have recovered if it weren't for your assistance," she commented, setting down her mug. "How did you locate me?" He responded with a gentle, almost regretful smile. "A person with my resources usually has people managing specifics, but let's just say I was highly driven." She felt her throat tighten. "I didn't do it for any reason." "I know," he said swiftly. "That's precisely why I'm here." A younger woman, likely in her mid-30s, emerged from behind him, stepping out of the Escalade with a thick envelope and a small tablet. She remained silent, simply waiting. "My name's Roland Greaves," the man stated. "I have several companies, primarily in logistics and software. It's not a flashy business, but I've achieved success. Earlier today, I was approximately 30 seconds from not experiencing another sunrise." Denise adjusted her posture, her jaw moving. She wasn't certain of the direction this conversation would take, but it felt significant. "I want to speak with you," Roland stated. "Just 5 minutes. I'm not here to offer you a product or create a disturbance, but I have a debt I'm unsure how to resolve." She hesitated, remaining uncertain. She then said softly, "You're welcome to sit if you wish." He nodded once. "Thank you." They proceeded together to the porch. She observed the cars passing by. No one else emerged from the vehicles. As he settled into a chair, Roland surveyed the surroundings. "Pleasant place. It has a lived-in feel." "That's right," she replied. "Mecca's room is the one with the damaged blind." She explained that she had broken it while trying to chase away a wasp. He smiled. "Sounds like a spirited individual." "Is she?" A brief pause occurred. He then turned to her. "May I ask you a personal question?" She nodded. "Why didn't you wait for another person to assist?" Denise inhaled deeply. "Because if it were me, I would have hoped someone wouldn't wait." He observed his gaze downwards. He nodded slowly. Then, he looked in her eyes once more. I needed to hear that, but Roland hadn't come solely to thank her. He'd come with a proposition, one that would assess the extent of her trust in the kindness of strangers. Denise leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed over her chest. "So," she said, maintaining a level tone, "what precisely is this concerning?" Roland moved closer, his elbows gently on his knees. "You gave me 12 minutes of your time, and in those 12 minutes you didn't pause. You didn't inquire who I was or what I might provide. You simply defended me." Denise remained silent. She wasn't swayed by words. She's heard numerous eloquent presentations at hospital fundraisers and board meetings. This felt distinct, but she still didn't understand his direction. "I established a company from nothing," he stated. "It began in a garage in Baton Rouge. My first product was shipped from a rented storage unit. I navigated through losses, lawsuits, and everything in between. Now I have 500 employees and the ability to set my own guidelines." He paused. "But despite all of that, I've never encountered someone helping me without expecting something in return. Not since my mother. That sort of generosity. It alters your viewpoint." Denise observed him intently. "So, what exactly are you proposing, Mr. Greaves?" "I'm not seeking assistance." He raised a hand. "Nor am I. I'm not attempting to provide a rescue. I'm aiming to make an investment." She frowned slightly. I researched your background, he continued. After my assistant located the incident report, I requested your employment history. Hope you aren't upset. Denise gave a humorless laugh. I'm accustomed to people investigating my affairs. This week has been filled with new experiences. Roland smiled. You were the most sought-after nurse in your department. There were notes from patients in the files about you. One woman mentioned that you were the reason she was able to get out of bed following her surgery. She also threw a shoe at me when I instructed her to perform her breathing exercises. He laughed. Nevertheless, she recalled you fondly. Then he retrieved something from his pocket. It was small, square, and black. He sat on the arm of her chair. A key fob. What is that? She inquired, looking at it but not touching it. It's for one of the cars parked outside, he said. The Lucid. Brand new. It's yours if you'd like it. Denise paused, studying it. Are you serious? She asked. As a second heart attack. He replied, only partially teasing. She didn't take the key. Why me? She questioned. I don't know many people like you, he stated plainly, and I've been thinking lately. I want to surround myself with people who move toward the problem, not away from it. People who act without needing a reason. He looked at her, his expression gentling. So I'd like to offer you a job. Denise blinked. He continued, I'm launching a new initiative. A wellness foundation linked to our company, focused on underserved communities, free clinics, training programs, and mental health outreach. Needs assistance. Funding is available, but we lack the personnel to establish it. We require someone with your expertise to help build it. Someone who understands the system's complexities and knows what individuals truly need. He paused. You would be director of clinical programs, responsible for setting the strategic direction and building your own team. The compensation is excellent, with full benefits. And you would have the autonomy to shape the foundation. She stared at him, speechless. Alternatively, he suggested softly, you're allowed to decline. I will still provide the vehicle. I will still express my gratitude. However, if you accept, I believe we have the potential to create something substantial. A pause settled between them, but it lacked tension. At length, Denise inquired, what would motivate you to entrust such a significant duty to someone you have only just met? Roland remained composed, stating, because occasionally, the instance in which someone rescues your life reveals that they are the individual you were meant to have known from the beginning. Denise found herself at a loss for words. She glanced at the key fob once more. Then, she looked at him. You'll give me time to think, take as long as you want. Just know this. I didn't come here to reward you. I came because I think the world needs more people like you making decisions that matter. But as soon as Roland left, Denise's heart remained unsettled. If anything, it pounded faster, because accepting meant stepping into something she wasn't sure she could manage. And that scared her more than losing a job ever did. That night, Denise remained restless. She sat on the bed's edge in the dimness, the faint light from the hallway offering little illumination. Her fingers followed the contours of the advanced key fob still on her nightstand, and used since Roland departed. It seemed overly substantial, overly swift, too remarkable to be genuine. She had experienced disappointment previously, not solely connected to the hospital. Years earlier, Mecca's father had pledged them security, only to disappear as debts accumulated. Denise understood from a young age to be wary of smiles, even those that appeared gentle. However, this opportunity felt different. It wasn't charity, it was a chance, one she hadn't anticipated. Needing a moment to herself, she put on a hoodie, placed the key fob in her pocket, and went outside. The Lucid remained, parked silently beneath the streetlight, its design distinct, its paint rich and flawless like midnight. She opened the driver's side door, anticipating an alarm. There was none. The vehicle greeted her as if familiar with her. Within, the cabin remained still and quiet, the dashboard illuminated with a gentle hum. She refrained from starting the engine. Instead, she simply sat, her palms resting on the steering wheel, inhaling a scent reminiscent of fresh leather and potential. She didn't register Mecca until the passenger door opened. Okay, Mom, her daughter stated, entering the car. Who did you rescue? And what sort of James Bond operation were you involved in? Denise looked up, surprised. What are you doing awake? The porch light was on, and you weren't in your room. That's code for Mom is spiraling. Mecca glanced around. This car is insane, by the way. Denise sighed. It was the man in the park. He found me. Mecca turned sharply. What? How? He's not just some guy. His name's Roland Greaves, owns like 3 companies. He offered me a job. Mecca's eyes widened. Doing what? Building something. A clinic. A program. He wants me to run it. Wait. He once met you, almost lost his life, and now wants you to lead his company's health division? That's the summary. Mecca reclined in the seat. And you're presently in the car he provided. Because you haven't decided yet. I don't want to accept something I didn't earn. Mom, Mecca said, looking at her. You save his life. You deserve the air in this car. Denise remained quiet. Look, Mecca continued. I understand. You're apprehensive. This feels like an opportunity that's almost unbelievable. You always said, fear doesn't get to run the show. You told me that the night before my first recital. That was different. No, it wasn't. Mecca's voice softened. This might be the first time in your life someone sees your worth openly. Not after 10 years. Not when you're desperate. But right now. And you're hesitating because you're used to fighting for scraps. Denise turned to look at her. You think I should take it? I think. Do not allow fear to guide your decision. They remained silent for a while longer. The following morning, Denise drove the Lucid. She drove slowly, not far, just a few miles down to a nearby diner, where she and Mecca used to eat breakfast when Mecca was little. She needed a place to think without feeling confined. While she drank her coffee, an older man in a corduroy jacket sitting at the counter gave her a polite nod. Beautiful car outside, he said. Denise turned, feeling a little unsteady, still adjusting. Can't complain about good fortune, he remarked, moving his cup. You simply need to ensure you utilize it wisely. But Denise understood that blessings invariably carried a cost, and the subsequent action would necessitate her abandoning everything she believed about herself, to evolve into someone else. Assuming she possessed the bravery, Denise remained in her kitchen, her arms crossed, observing the document Roland's assistant had provided. It detailed the job description and compensation package. The title, Director of Clinical Programs, still felt unfamiliar, like something that belonged to someone else. The numbers on the salary line alone made her chest tighten. She'd always been modest, made her way on steady, honest work. Never dreamed of 6 figures, certainly not with benefits and a personal driver listed in the perks. It felt unreal, uncomfortable even, but not because it wasn't real, because part of her believed she didn't deserve it. Denise answered the phone, not to contact Roland, but to reach out to someone else, a name she hadn't spoken in years. Hi, is this Bernardine Willis? A moment of silence. Then a recognizable voice responded, Yes, who is calling? It was Denise. Denise Lattimore. They had worked together at Jefferson Medical when they were both assigned to the night shift. Another pause, then a surprised laugh. Girl, are you kidding me? Denise? From 2A? I thought you disappeared. I was let go this week. The line was silent for a moment. And you? You were excellent. That's what I believed as well. Denise outlined the situation concisely. The collapse. The man. The offer. Bernardine expressed quiet disbelief. And you're contacting me because? Because I harbor doubts. And because I fear I might not be adequate. Bernardine responded immediately. Denise, the hospital never appreciated your value. We all recognize that. You mentored half those new employees while they rewarded positions to individuals who couldn't recall the crash cart protocols. Denise laughed once. I recall, when someone recognizes your value and offers you the opportunity to influence things, embrace it. Denise felt a warmth behind her eyes. And what if it fails? She inquired. Then you'll leave with your head held high, as you always have. But don't decline because you believe you'll be out of place. You're not. More than most. That night, Denise didn't pace the floor. She didn't overthink. She retrieved the contract, reviewed it completely, and then signed. The following morning, Roland contacted her. I allowed you a few days, he stated. You weren't required to have them, Denise responded. My decision is made. A pause followed on his end, then a drawn-out breath. Are you certain? I am certain. She continued. However, I require one thing from you. Anything. She clarified, I don't want to be a token hire. I don't want you to showcase me as your feel-good project. If I am joining, I'm coming to work. I will build the team. I will call the shots. Roland's voice became serious. That's precisely why I wanted you, he said. And with a chuckle, he added, I'm not addressing you as sir. Deal, he concluded. A meeting was scheduled for Monday. He would have his legal team finalize onboarding procedures. She would visit the campus they were assessing in Tuscaloosa, the location for the first community clinic. After she ended the call, Denise paused in the kitchen, her bare feet on the tile floor, as sunlight streamed through the blinds. She had just made what felt like the biggest decision of her life. It wasn't born of necessity, but of deliberate choice. Mecca appeared at the head of the stairs, still in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. You're up early, she observed. I have work to do. Her daughter addressed her. Did you take it? Mecca replied, I did. Mecca smiled. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said. I'm proud of me too. However, Denise understood that this wasn't the conclusion. It marked the start of a life she never imagined achieving, and she was now entering it, not as someone pleading for a place, but as someone asserting her right to it. When Denise first passed through the double glass doors of the building in Tuscaloosa, the feeling wasn't one of intrusion. It felt like returning to a familiar place. The building wasn't elaborate, not yet. The flooring was concrete, the walls unadorned, and wires still protruded from the ceiling, but she envisioned it clearly. She saw the intake desk positioned to the right, a children's play area directly opposite, consultation rooms extending along the rear hallway, a location where care would not be a luxury. It would be commonplace. Roland entered, carrying rolled-up blueprints beneath one arm and a coffee in the other. He gave it to her silently. She smiled and accepted it. Day one, he stated. More like step one, she responded. During the subsequent weeks, Denise began her work. She sought out not only former colleagues, but also individuals who had been overlooked, underutilized, and undervalued. This included nurses, aides, translators, and even a former janitor who desired to learn administrative tasks. Denise possessed the ability to nurture potential, training those with the willingness to learn. Her focus wasn't constructing a clinic, it was cultivating a culture. Each morning, she drove the same car, a gift from Lucid Greaves, not to display it, but to recall the origins of her work. It was a reminder of that pivotal moment in the park, hands placed on a stranger's chest, desperately hoping to detect a heartbeat. After 6 months, the clinic quietly opened its doors, without fanfare or publicity, simply relying on patience. A woman accompanied by her 2 children, who had not received medical care in 3 years. A man with uncontrolled diabetes, a teenager seeking assistance with anxiety. Denise welcomed each individual as if they were old friends. There were no barriers of paperwork or procedure, just compassionate care. One afternoon, while she was revising intake protocols at her desk, her receptionist softly knocked on the open door and announced, "There's someone here requesting to see you." Without a name given, Denise entered the lobby and paused, visibly surprised. He was the man from the park. Roland had visited, sure, but this wasn't him. This was the man she'd knelt beside, whose chest she compressed until life returned. Dressed in a simple navy sweater and jeans, with a quiet smile that conveyed something deeper than words. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "You did more than enough." He walked over slowly, pulled something from his pocket. A small, flat velvet box. Denise shook her head. "If that's jewelry, I swear I'll toss it right back." He laughed. "No, it's not jewelry." She opened the box. Inside was a bronze medallion, etched with an emblem she didn't recognize. "It's from my mother's side," he said. "Passed down 3 generations. My grandmother gave it to my mom when she became the first black woman in her district to run a public health clinic." Denise's fingers closed gently around it. "I think she'd have wanted you to have it." She swallowed hard. "I'm not family." "You're exactly what family looks like," he said softly. "At least the kind that saves lives." Later that night, Denise sat on her porch again. Not with tea, with silence. The good kind. The kind that lets you breathe. The street was quiet. No more engines. No more questions. Just peace. Mecca stepped out, leaned on the railing beside her. "Long day?" she asked. "Best kind," Denise said. They sat together, watching the sky turn purple over the rooftops. After a long pause, Mecca said, "It's funny. What is? How you save a life, and somehow it ended up saving yours too." Denise didn't reply. She didn't need to, because she understood now. Some moments fundamentally alter everything. Not because they're dramatic or widely known, but because they reveal your true character when you are alone. And when you act from love, without any expectation of reward, sometimes life responds in an unexpected way. Should you find yourself in a situation where your efforts feel unseen and your work goes unrecognized, please recall this. Gratitude may not always be expressed openly, but it remains. And when it does reappear, it can be more significant than you could have foreseen. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who could benefit from hearing it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We have more stories similar to this that demonstrate the profound impact of a single positive decision. A man struck a 53-year-old woman on public transit, mistakenly believing she was alone and vulnerable. He was unaware that her husband held the position of the most respected officer in town. It had been a challenging day, characterized by delays and setbacks. When Vanessa Kirkland arrived at the Blue Line platform in downtown Sacramento, her heels were causing discomfort, her back ached, and she was 2 missed calls behind schedule on her way to the train. The time was approaching 6:15 p.m. The sun had already begun to descend behind the old courthouse building. She looked at her phone, but did not check the notifications. Not tonight. Vanessa was 53, possessing a sharp mind, a warm voice, and consistently wearing her silver-framed glasses and demonstrating patience. She worked as a lead advocate at a nonprofit legal center, experiencing long days, emotionally draining environments, and paperwork that was constant. Nevertheless, she wouldn't trade it. Assisting individuals, particularly families navigating a system they found perplexing or untrustworthy, felt like a duty, not merely a profession. As the train arrived, she boarded and looked for a place to sit. Limited space was available. She located a partially filled row towards the center and settled in with a soft exhale, placing her tote bag next to her. The atmosphere was largely peaceful. Passengers were absorbed in their phones, listening to music or browsing on screens. A teenager in a school hoodie, chewing gum and watching something with the volume a little too high, sat directly across from her. 2 seats to her left, a couple of nurses still in scrubs spoke softly in Spanish. It was nothing out of the ordinary. The train began to move. Vanessa rested her head and breathed out. She considered dinner, likely just leftovers. Perhaps she would reheat that lentil stew, or possibly just cereal and a long bath. Her thoughts wandered. But then a voice arose. It was loud, rapid, and smug. "Excuse me, I'm going to ask you something." She didn't move at first, just opened her eyes slowly. Across the aisle, a man had gotten on at the last stop. Mid-20s, tall, wiry, and loud, wore a sleeveless hoodie and had headphones around his neck. He was looking straight at her, grinning. Vanessa blinked once, didn't say a word. He leaned a little closer. "I'm serious. You're sitting up here as if you're running for mayor, wearing a complete church ensemble." I observed her. A nearby teenager chuckled softly. The man visibly straightened, seeming to relish the attention. "You must be going somewhere important, ma'am," he stated. She remained silent. Adjusting her glasses, she maintained a dignified posture and subtly turned her head toward the window. However, he wasn't finished. He began pacing with deliberate, measured steps down the aisle, gesturing at various passengers. "People like her," he declared, "always act as if they are superior. Sit straight, avert your gaze, and remain silent." It seemed as though others judged us harshly. People began to notice. A woman near the front briefly looked back before quickly averting her gaze. A young man behind Vanessa subtly reached for his phone. Vanessa felt no surge of panic. Years of practice had taught her to remain composed during confrontations. She recognized this behavior, a display of confidence fueled by the desire for attention. A man who felt more powerful when others appeared diminished. She spoke calmly. "You should take a seat." Her voice was even, neither raised nor trembling, simply resolute. The man paused. He paused, appearing hesitant. Then, he tilted his head. "Oh, are you giving orders now? Do you have a badge or something?" Vanessa remained unmoved. "No, but you're embarrassing yourself in front of a train full of strangers." His smile briefly wavered. Then he moved closer, too close. However, the atmosphere in the car shifted. People were observing now, more than previously. There was tension, certainly, but also a sense of anticipation, as if everyone was awaiting the next development. Vanessa remained still, her gaze fixed on him, her hands resting in her lap. He smirked. "You got a mouth on you. Let's see if you talk like that when I'm a little closer." But he didn't know who he was addressing, and he was about to discover that the hard way. The train rattled forward, cutting through the city as if oblivious to the escalating tension inside Car 7. The man, later identified as Kyle Dunham, aged 26, with a record full of petty nonsense, stood inches from Vanessa now. A subtle aroma of malt liquor and mint gum emanated from his breath. He lowered himself, observing her with the gaze of a child studying a motionless doll, anticipating her to break eye contact first. She remained steadfast. "You're one of those strong, independent types, huh?" He expectorated. "Always got something smart to say when there's people around to protect you. But you on your own now, sweetheart." Vanessa released a barely perceptible sigh, the kind intended to convey disappointment, not weariness. "I'm not on my own," she stated. Kyle surveyed the surroundings with a flourish. "Oh, who has you back, then?" he called out, raising his voice. "Does anyone among you want to come and save Grandma over here?" He paused. "No, I didn't expect so." The word grandma stung more than he anticipated, not because of her age, but because of the implication behind it. It suggested she was diminished, that women aged and became invisible, useless, laughable, something to ridicule, not to honor. Nevertheless, she remained composed. "You're embarrassing yourself," she stated gently. "That's what bullies do when they are afraid." Kyle appeared startled, freezing in place. "How do you know my name?" he demanded. Vanessa subtly shifted forward, her voice remaining composed. "You mentioned it earlier, on the phone, prior to boarding the train. That was a deception." He denied having done so, but her statement unnerved him, prompting him to question what else she might know. "You're crazy," he mumbled. Vanessa turned back toward the window, not in a dismissive manner, but as if he were insignificant. This was the catalyst. Kyle's pride couldn't withstand the rejection. The audience had fallen silent. His performance was unsuccessful, and a bitter expression tightened his features. "Finish speaking now?" he demanded. "All that talking, and now you're afraid?" Vanessa remained silent, so he gently nudged her shoulder, a clear indication that this was no longer a verbal exchange. A sharp intake of breath came from the rear of the vehicle immediately. Vanessa raised her gaze slowly, maintaining her composure and silence. "Kyle," she stated, "this is your final opportunity to take a seat and depart with some measure of self-respect." Kyle's thoughts had vanished. He was consumed by anger. Humiliated, vulnerable, and needing to regain command, he struck her. The sound was distinct, a smack of skin against skin. Her glasses moved slightly. Her head tilted a little due to the impact. Exclamations arose, escalating into a commotion. People stood up. Phones appeared. A voice called out from the rear. Vanessa simply blinked, then remained still. She carefully straightened her glasses, neatly arranged a strand of hair behind her ear, then fixed her gaze directly upon him. "You have just committed a significant error." Kyle hesitated briefly, his hands still raised, his breathing now shallow. "Who do you think you are?" he asked, his voice softer. She inclined her head. "You'll find out soon enough." Two rose back. The young man who had been quietly recording rose and walked to the rear of the car. He had observed something in her eyes, something unyielding, not fearful. It prompted his movement. A voice murmured, "She's important. I believe she's someone." Another voice followed. "Is that the chief's wife?" "That's the police chief's wife." And now Kyle was hearing the murmur. "What?" he said. No one answered, but the mood in the car shifted. It had gone from outrage to recognition. This wasn't just a woman on a train anymore. This was somebody. Vanessa stayed still. Her cheek stung. Her hand trembled just a little in her lap. But she didn't let it show. Instead, she reached for her phone, opened a text, typed 5 words, "Call me when you can." Sent. She glanced upward, not toward Kyle, but at the doors. The train was one stop from Curtis Park Station, and that was the extent of his remaining time. Curtis Park Station was less than 2 minutes away now. But for all those inside the train car, time began to lengthen. No one was speaking anymore. Not genuinely. There were hushed tones, murmurs, yes. But the atmosphere had changed, becoming concentrated and oppressive. Kyle sensed it. He disliked it. He positioned himself in the middle of the aisle, as if he had something yet to demonstrate. His gaze now moved frequently, scanning the passengers who avoided eye contact. He observed those recording, resenting their lack of laughter. They weren't fearful of him, either. Not anymore. "Man, you're tripping," he mumbled. She started it, trying to appear superior. No one reacted. Across from him, Vanessa had repositioned her tote onto her lap. Her fingers were clenched around the straps, her thumb rhythmically stroking a small stitched detail. She felt no fear. However, anger simmered within her. A quiet anger, an anger that held back, an anger that was justified. Her skin still felt hot. The mark of his hand remained visible. She refrained from touching it. Maintaining a composed stance, she kept her shoulders straight. She was aware of the scrutiny, not only from those with phones, but also from the observant individuals who had witnessed similar incidents and felt powerless. Now, their attention was on her, and so was Kyle's. "You think you're better than me," he hissed suddenly. "That's what this is. You people always act like you're too good." Vanessa finally looked at him. Her voice was low. "I don't think I'm better than you. I think you're making choices you're going to regret." "You threatening me?" He shot back. "No," she said. "I'm warning you. There's a difference." The train gave a mechanical groan as it began slowing into Curtis Park. The lights flickered once overhead. Kyle turned toward the door, fidgeting. A woman 2 seats down whispered something to her boyfriend. He nodded subtly, moved his hand into his jacket pocket, a badge, an off-duty officer merely awaiting the signal. And then Kyle turned back one last time. "You ain't nothing but a loudmouth in a skirt," he spat. "Nobody gonna save you." And with that, he reared his hand back again. But this time someone moved. Not Vanessa, not the off-duty cop. A man, tall, with a beard and still wearing a dusty construction vest from work, moved quickly from the rear of the car. He seized Kyle's wrist as he started to swing and pulled it down forcefully. "Try that again, and I'll break your arm," the man stated, his voice calm but menacing. Kyle attempted to free himself, but was unable to. The man's grip was stronger and more resolute. "Finished?" he inquired. Kyle swore, recoiled, and stumbled toward the opposite wall of the train. He appeared like a trapped creature, snarling more from panic than from any sense of dignity. Vanessa rose. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't theatrical. Just even. She surveyed the car, noting the woman with her phone, the young man in the hoodie, the child in the back feigning disinterest. Then she looked at Kyle. "I won't file charges for what you just did," she stated, her voice clear enough for everyone to hear. "But someone will. Someone invariably does. And when they do, I hope it's recorded." The train emitted a hiss as the doors opened. Curtis Park Station. Light flooded in from the platform. There, on the platform, accompanied by 2 plainclothes officers, stood Darius Kirkland. He wasn't wearing a uniform. It wasn't necessary. He wore a black button-down shirt and slacks, and his expression was stern and intense. He boarded the train. Silence filled the space. Kyle stared at him, puzzled. "Who?" Darius spoke, his tone direct. Kyle remained still. Darius advanced 1 step. Now, a badge appeared, revealed with quiet assurance. The name was visible. Kirkland. Kyle's gaze shifted to Vanessa. An understanding dawned. That name, her. "Oh no," he breathed. The off-duty officer behind him placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let's go." "I didn't know." Kyle shouted. "Yo, I didn't know who she was." Darius said nothing. Vanessa stepped off the train first. She didn't look back. But the man who slapped her would never forget the moment he realized who she was, nor how close he came to losing a lot more than his pride. They walked Kyle off the platform like a child being removed from class for misbehaving. This wasn't a school setting, and no message would be sent home. The train departed behind them. Vanessa maintained a steady, even pace as she walked. Darius walked beside her, mostly silent. He didn't need to speak. His jaw was tense, not with anger, but with controlled composure. Years of policing had shown him the value of knowing when to speak and when silence was more impactful. Behind them, Kyle was guided to a bench close to the platform stairs. He was breathing rapidly, his eyes wide, still processing what had occurred. A plainclothes officer stood close by, observing with little visible emotion. Vanessa reduced her speed and then spoke softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm okay." Darius looked at her, his eyes showing a trace of gentleness for the first time since boarding the train. "I know you are," he replied, "but I'm not." He hesitated. "I saw the entire video before I arrived. The initial message I received was from Naomi Simmons. Do you recall her? From Housing Court?" Vanessa gave a single nod. She witnessed the event as it unfolded, communicating it to me in just 4 words. "Is this your wife?" Vanessa released a sigh that mingled amusement and weary comfort. "You should have observed the child in the 3rd row," she remarked. He attempted to disappear the instant that boy began to be noisy, resembling Darren when he would feign sleep to evade tasks. Darius laughed softly. "I long for that boy," she acknowledged, her eyes wandering across the platform. Many people on that train likely recognized this scenario. However, this time the events unfolded differently. He touched her shoulder gently. "It's because you didn't react," she said. "That alters everything." A few yards behind them, Kyle began to fall apart. Not from guilt, not yet, but from fear. The fog lifted, and the man he slapped was standing nearby, shaking hands with law enforcement, while his own hands were held beneath his thighs like a child avoiding reprimand. An officer spoke to him, and his reply was abrupt and overly loud. Darius overheard. "I didn't even hit her that hard." He glanced at Vanessa, his expression remaining composed. "Do you mind if I handle this?" She gave an affirmative nod. "I trust you." Darius then proceeded back toward Kyle, his steps deliberate and controlled, as if approaching a speaker's platform rather than a bench. Kyle sat up straighter as he noticed Darius's approach. "Yo, look, I didn't know who she was, man. I didn't know she was, like, married to a cop. I believe she was simply just what?" Darius interrupted. "Tell me." Kyle's mouth opened, but he didn't speak. Darius sat beside him, maintaining a comfortable distance. "You thought she was merely a woman. Alone. An easy target." Kyle's lips tightened, seeking an explanation. "She was speaking her mind." "No," Darius responded, his voice calm. "She was demonstrating composure. That's not a common sight, is it? I didn't harm her in that way, though. You made contact with her. You placed your hands on her. Before an audience. Recorded on camera. And then there was another attempt." Kyle scanned the area, as if searching for support. But the platform was empty. There was no one to assist him. No one ever did for people like Vanessa. "That was intentional," Darius stated. "You're fortunate because she's extending understanding that others wouldn't. But don't misinterpret that as a sign of vulnerability." Kyle lowered his gaze. His earlier arrogance diminished to a smaller form. The inflated self-assurance had vanished. He appeared more like a boy now, lost, tired, and suddenly very aware of how much worse things could have been. "What's going to happen to me?" he asked. "That depends," Darius said. "Right now, you're being detained. There's an outstanding warrant on you for a missed court date from 3 months ago." Kyle's mouth dropped open. Unrelated, but not forgotten. Darius stood up. "And later?" "That depends on what kind of man you decide to be when you walk out of holding." He turned, not waiting for a reply, and returned to Vanessa, who was now seated close to a column, eyes closed in a brief moment of quiet. However, the complete story wasn't finished, and its full impact hadn't completely arrived. At least, not yet. They didn't depart the station immediately. Vanessa had taken a place on the lengthy metal bench beside the wall, sheltered by the weathered Curtis Park sign. She sat straight, legs crossed at the ankle, and her hands were finally relaxed. A stillness had returned, the type often present after a disturbance. Darius stood a short distance away, holding a phone to his ear and speaking softly. Vanessa couldn't discern his words, but she understood his demeanor. It was the voice he employed when rectifying another's blunder. Following a few minutes, he ended the call, approached her, and sat next to her. "They're taking him to county," he stated. "He isn't facing charges yet for the slap. Not unless you request it." Vanessa remained silent for a moment. She wasn't trying to be elusive. She simply needed a short time to consider what was most important. "I won't push," she stated following a brief silence. "Let the warrant take care of it. That's sufficient for now," Darius agreed slowly, nervously biting his lower lip. He acknowledged her fortunate position. They remained seated next to each other. People passed them on the platform, some offering curious looks, some murmuring as they recognized her from the videos already in circulation. Vanessa had experienced widespread online attention previously. However, nothing like this. Typically, the shared content consisted of excerpts from her addresses at city forums or housing events. Previously, a video of her embracing a woman who had recently won a child custody case had garnered thousands of likes. However, this situation was different. Now, she was the woman on the train, and her face, still faintly marked where Kyle's hand had landed, was circulating across timelines and news feeds in real time. She anticipated the consequences: comment sections, opinions, outrage, and debate. Some might describe her as a hero. Others might perceive her as lenient for not responding in kind. Still others would likely seek to place blame. Darius broke the silence. "Remember that speech I gave last week?" he began. "About dignity, public space, and consequence?" She replied, "Yes, I was in the front row." He continued, "I said every citizen deserves to move through their city without fear. That is the baseline, not the luxury." She nodded. He went on, "When I said that, I was thinking about everyone. Children walking to school, grandparents catching the bus, teachers, nurses, grocery clerks. I hadn't been thinking about you," she acknowledged. "I know," she said gently, "and I regret that I hadn't." Vanessa turned to him. "Please don't do that." He lowered his gaze. "You shouldn't have been in that situation." She offered a brief laugh. "Do you believe I haven't faced worse?" His eyes rose. "I've lived 53 years in this skin, Darius. On this earth, in this body. I've been followed, yelled at, disrespected, dismissed, and talked over. It simply so happened they were recorded." He showed no smile. Yet, he seemed to grasp the sentiment. "You've always been stronger than I remarked. "No," she replied. "I'm simply more experienced." A train whistle echoed as a train arrived at the station. A different vehicle, different travelers, the same city. A young woman in scrubs drew near carefully, her gaze shifting between them. "Excuse me, Mrs. Kirkland?" she inquired. Vanessa turned. "Yes, I just wanted to express my gratitude," she said, "for the way you manage him, for maintaining your dignity." Vanessa rose, offered her hand. "What's your name?" Rosa replied, "I'm a nurse at St. Joseph's." "You had a long shift?" Vanessa nodded. "You take care of people all day." "Thank you." Rosa appeared taken aback by the courtesy. She offered a small nod and departed. Darius rose to stand next to his wife. "Let's go home." But Vanessa didn't move immediately. She glanced around the platform one last time, observing the train tracks, the benches, the signage, and the flow of people as if nothing had occurred. It felt as if time had restarted. "I'll ride the train tomorrow," she stated. "Are you certain?" "Yes. And the following day. And the day after that. I refuse to be silenced simply because someone is unfamiliar with me," Darius said, placing a gentle hand on her back. However, as they departed the station, neither of them realized the extent to which this moment would affect those beyond the train car. This became clear when the news broke. By the time they arrived at their home in Southland Park, Vanessa's phone had received more than 20 notifications. Darius had received a significant influx of communication. Friends, journalists, colleagues, and individuals they hadn't spoken to in years suddenly recalled their contact information. She chose not to respond to most of these inquiries. The incident had already been reported in the local news by 9 p.m. One news source titled their report community leader assaulted on light rail. Suspect apprehended at station. Another opted for a more dramatic headline. Slap on the train sparks debate over civility and race. However, the video clips were the content that spread most rapidly. A 16-second vertical video, filmed by someone sitting 3 rows back, captured Kyle's words. "This is our Lance." It showed the slap and the subsequent moment where she met his gaze, appearing unaffected by his action. Within hours, the video surpassed 100,000 views, then 200, and finally 500,000. Each comment offered an opinion. Some praised her composure, others questioned why no one intervened earlier, and predictably, some found fault. Daria was sitting on the bed's edge, looking at news articles, her jaw tight. Vanessa entered from the bathroom, her face freshly washed and her hair wrapped. "You should put that away," Vanessa said. Daria looked up. "I keep reading these comments. People analyzing what you should have said. What you didn't say. It's as if you were putting on a show. That's the internet." Daria replied, "I simply dislike seeing you transformed into a symbol." Vanessa lifted an eyebrow. "That has been occurring since I was 13 years old. The first instance I experienced being followed in a drugstore simply for wearing lip gloss marked a turning point." Daria sighed. "I know. I only wanted you to find some quiet." "I have quiet," she replied, "and I still do. That boy didn't deprive me of anything. In fact, he provided a space for me to express what I've always felt." He looked at her, pausing. "That regardless of your identity, respect isn't gained through increased volume or physical force. It's demonstrated by how you regard those who are not indebted to you." She positioned herself beside him, carefully taking the phone from his grasp and placing it on the nightstand. "You recall what you told the academy class last spring?" she inquired. "Which part?" He responded, "We don't train for revenge. We train for response." Darius chuckled softly. "I borrowed that line from my grandfather." "Well, you gave it meaning," she replied. "It's the same reason I refrained from reacting with force today. You address situations as they arise, not according to others' expectations, but as they require." A pause. "Did you see how many people were watching?" She continued. "If I had lost control, it wouldn't have been about him anymore. It would have become a completely different situation." Darius nodded slowly. "You are correct." At that moment, a new message appeared on Vanessa's phone. This one was not from the press. It was from a mother of a high school student she'd represented 6 months earlier in a school discrimination case. She had defended him after he'd been suspended for what proved to be a false accusation by a teacher. The message stated, "My son saw the video and said, 'That's Miss Kirkland. She's real. I just want you to know how much you matter to people like us. Thank you for being who you are.'" Vanessa looked at the message for a long moment. Then she gave the phone to Darius silently. He read it, exhaled, and for the first time that night, he allowed himself to smile. "You matter," he said. "So do you," she replied. The following morning, while they were seated together on the porch enjoying coffee, a news van leisurely drove down the street. The vehicle didn't halt, but the camera within directed its view towards the house before proceeding onward. "I suspect today will be more eventful than anticipated," he remarked. "I believe every day is," Vanessa replied. She rose, stretched, and retrieved her tote bag near the door. "Are you going out?" he asked. "Yes. They require my presence at the center. We have eviction hearings scheduled for this week. I will not be absent due to someone being unable to accept a woman speaking directly." Darius also rose. "Desire a lift?" She offered a smile. "No, I will travel by train." She observed her intently for a moment. "Are you certain?" "I want to be visible. Identical seat, identical time. Because I'm not the one who requires anonymity." However, as Vanessa resumed her schedule, the events that transpired on that train continued to resonate far beyond the station, impacting dinner conversations, classrooms, news organizations, and homes throughout the nation. Following those initial moments, video recordings of Vanessa Kirkland were shared across newsrooms, courtrooms, break rooms, and barbershops. The incident generated discussion in locations that seldom addressed individuals like her, middle-aged, black, composed during pressure, unaffected by disorder. Podcasts featured it. Community forums offered perspectives. National broadcasters attempted to contextualize it, as though it conformed to a predetermined narrative concerning race, gender, and power. However, the situation defied easy categorization. That was its compelling quality. Despite everything, Vanessa consistently took the same train, often securing the same seat when available. Whenever someone recognized her, they would offer a nod or a quiet expression of gratitude. On one occasion, an elderly gentleman approached her to simply state, "I witnessed what occurred. I'm showing my granddaughter." I told her, this is how one maintains composure during a crisis. Vanessa, however, wasn't seeking acknowledgement. That's what made her actions so meaningful. She had navigated hardships previously. The difference was that the world hadn't been documenting it. The city organized a public forum 2 weeks later. Community safety, transportation, and law enforcement relations were the focus of the meeting. The hall was full. Darius was invited to speak. Attendees anticipated a discussion about crime statistics and updated patrol approaches. However, he chose to recount the story of the train. "I wasn't present at the beginning," he stated from the podium. "I wasn't seated beside her. I didn't observe the expression in his gaze or the stillness with which she remained while others spoke. But I was present when it concluded, and what I witnessed extended beyond my wife." He embodied restraint, strength, and a level of control that most of us only discuss in theory. He paused, looking out at the crowd. Her actions transcended mere self-preservation. She demonstrated that standing your ground doesn't always require physical force. Sometimes it involves maintaining composure when someone is attempting to undermine you. Vanessa remained silent that evening. She was seated in the second row, wearing a navy blazer and black slacks, her hands resting in her lap, observing, hearing, understanding. Afterward, as they headed back to the vehicle, a young reporter stepped forward. He appeared apprehensive, holding a microphone in one hand and a phone in the other. "Mrs. Kirkland," he began, "do you believe you represent something, given what transpired?" She regarded him. "I am not a symbol," she replied. "I am a woman. I was weary. I was on the train, returning home, and someone believed that entitled them to behave as though I lacked significance, but the manner in which it was addressed. Many are describing it as impactful." She remained composed. "What's impactful," she stated, "is learning how to maintain your composure in a world that persistently attempts to disrupt it." He began to pose another inquiry, but she raised her hand subtly. "That is all," she responded. "Have a good evening." She and Darius departed into the night, and the story, though no longer dominating news coverage, persisted. It resonated in discussions among friends, in classrooms, when instructors utilized it as a practical example. Reflecting on the events, many recalled the emotions they felt witnessing it, prompting introspection about their own responses, their own stillness, and their own sense of self-respect. Kyle Dunham appeared in court 3 days following his arrest. The court referenced his previous charges and imposed a 30-day detention while awaiting further investigation. Vanessa did not attend the court proceedings, stating that she had already expressed what she needed to. The legal center where she worked experienced an increase in support following the incident. Financial support arrived, and individuals registered to volunteer. A few referenced the video, but the majority expressed a desire to contribute to something impactful without needing fanfare. Vanessa Kirkland, in particular, continued her daily train journeys. That train, for better or worse, evolved into a visible representation of dignity and action. In a world often filled with distractions, individuals such as Vanessa Kirkland serve as a reminder of a truth that is often overlooked. True resilience isn't always loud. Occasionally, it remains still, speaks with composure, and stands firm. This isn't driven by a desire to triumph, but a determination to remain present. If this narrative resonated with you, prompted reflection, or evoked thoughts of someone familiar, please share it. Subscribe for further authentic stories similar to this one, highlighting how quiet strength can be more impactful than force and justice can manifest in unexpected ways. Remember, you never know who you might encounter on the train.